here the job posting. And what I mean by that is actually taking the job posting and thinking about for each bullet point, each requirement, each qualification, everything that's there, what experience have you had best demonstrates your ability to do that. So what I encourage everybody to do is actually take their current resume and blank out all of the bullets. Keep all the administrative sections like the dates and all that sort of stuff, but blank out the bullets. And then take the job posting, and for bullet point 1 on the job posting, say, what experience best demonstrates my ability to do this? And then you put that here. The next one, what experience best demonstrates my ability to do that? That might be the same experience. This one is down here. This one is back here. This one is here. And then you fill up the resume. And I'll do a little exercise in a little bit on why that's so important. Because if you're not doing that, if you're doing the standard process of taking one resume and sending it to everybody else, then it's a very low probability that you'll get some responses. And the last one that from a priorities perspective for resumes that I encourage everyone to do is to upgrade their activities to achievements. And what that means is basically for every bullet, think about, does this demonstrate what I did, which is an activity, or does this demonstrate how well I did it, which is an achievement? And the example that I usually use is, so on your bullet, you say, I managed a team of 5 people. Is that good or is that bad? Well, not sure, because if I said manage a team of 5 people, and then within a month, all of them quit because I micromanaged them to death, that's not a very good outcome. But if I say manage a team of 5 people, and then within 12 months, each of them were top performing salespeople in their respective regions, well, that says something different. So can you demonstrate that you did it, or demonstrate that you did it well? And usually there are 3 ways that you do it, either through time, cost, or quality, right? So did you do it faster or keep a client longer? Did you make more money or reduce expenses? Did you get more compliments, or did you have fewer errors? Any one of those. And even thinking about your work experience and say, well, how do I know that I did a good job? Usually it's the last one where my manager said so, that I did a good job. But how else? Are there any kind of tangible metrics that you can have? So if you can put a number there, an absolute or relative percentage or anything, that can go a long way in order to say, because not only did you do what they said, you can demonstrate that I did it well. So those are the 3 basic priorities that I encourage everyone, and you have to do them really well, because to at least get into the top of the pile, and when you level yourself up, then you kind of increase your area there. And one activity that I like to do when I talk about that reverse engineering of the job posting is to compare the resume screening with the game of bingo, right? Who here knows the game of bingo? So if you can either type in the chat or maybe give me a thumbs up in the what do you call it, the video, that would be awesome. If anybody knows how to do that. Yeah, perfect. Thanks so much. So like the game of bingo, for those that don't know, is you have numbers from 1 to 75, and essentially it's arranged on a card. You have BINGO at the top of the card and 25 numbers, right? And if you think of the numbers 1 to 75 as the universe of things, of qualifications, of responsibilities, of attributes and qualifications that you need for a job, things like number 1 might be leadership, might be number 2 might be teamwork, number 3 might be a particular technology, and number 4 might be a business process, or everything that is required. So that's what's required for that job. And the bingo card you can think of as a recruiter's job description, what they're looking for. So what I want everyone to do is within the chat to basically pick 10 numbers. Any 10 numbers between 1 and 75, and they don't, none of them repeating. They don't have to be in order or whatever, but basically pick 10 numbers in the chat window. So whatever numbers that you want. If I can get everybody to type 10 numbers in there, I'll give you a minute to do that, and hopefully I'll start seeing a few responses in there. Hopefully folks understood my instructions. Just 10 numbers. Anyone want to sum that? Perfect. Thanks, Mateus. And again, make sure that they're not repeating, but that's good. They don't have to be in order. Piotr, assuming I probably butchered that name. Renato, perfect. That's great. So if I can get folks to do that, and I'll keep going. So again, we're thinking about all of these numbers like all the attributes. So on a recruiter's bingo card, they have 25 numbers or 10 bullet points or however many bullet points in the job description, and that's what they're asking for. Your resume is basically you. It is basically the bingo caller. They're now calling out, this is the stuff that I have, and the recruiter has to match what they have. So thanks for everyone, and hopefully you can quickly do that. But I'll quickly switch to the next screen, and the next screen basically says, oops, these are all my numbers. So what I'd love to do, and no cheating involved or whatever, match the numbers. How many of you, so the numbers are 2, 4, 7, 9, 12, 24, 48, 55, 56, 71. Did anybody match one number? 2, 3, 4, 5, any 4? That I think the highest I've ever had is someone match 5. So you're almost there. But if you think about it, the resume and the job description are basically the equivalent of bingo and the bingo card. So the recruiter is saying, I want B5, right? And you're saying 072. Okay. And the recruiter is saying, the recruiter is saying whatever, I-17, and you're saying G53. It's like, well, they're not even close. So you can see how putting in your bullet points, whatever that you want to tell them, if they're not matching with the job description and what they're asking for, you can see why the recruiter can't yell bingo and get you an interview. So if you want to increase your probability, and that's probably the best way of getting that interview, you need to reverse engineer the job posting, right? So that's why it's so important. And hopefully that example and that analogy really kind of sunk it in, and why it's so important, and probably why many of you, you might have submitted a lot of resumes and not got a lot of interviews. And in this day and age, a lot of people are doing that, and what they differ from is a lot of people are referred. So in the recruiting world, there's a pile that comes in from the ATS system, the applicant tracking systems, and there's a small little pile that comes from other people in the company that have referred them in, right? And oftentimes it's those referrals that come in there that really are the ones that are paid attention more, because they have the validation of someone in the company who knows the culture of the company that's saying that this person is good. And one of the discussions as well is when you network and connect with people, oftentimes jobs will actually be created for you because you're adding value, you're contributing to the company. Then they'll say, wow, we really need someone with your skills. We should create a job for you. So there have been numerous times where I've spoken to people where jobs have actually been created. The company didn't know they needed someone, but because you've demonstrated value to them through the time that you knew them, then they decide to create a job for you. So that's why an emphasis on networking is, in my opinion, very, very important and very relevant. So the other part is the networking is also an informal interview. So if you hate that whole interview process, then a lot of times to bypass it, by networking and them already knowing your skills and the things that you can do, then the networking helps you bypass that whole process, or at least make it more of a formality versus anything significant. So that's the resume part, which is the most challenging one for most people because it's the lowest probability part of this whole process, and really getting through to this interview is the most challenging. The next is to start practicing your interview questions. So one is to start now, right? Don't wait until you have an interview. Don't be like you were in school and cram until the night before to do it. Start practicing now, because unfortunately, the skill of interviewing actually has very little correlation with you being able to do the job, right? So what you are expected to do is things like the top 100 from Google, right? So go on Google, type top 100 interview questions. Tell me about yourself. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? You better have a great answer to all of those, because those are going to be the most common ones that are provided. But also go out there and research the company, research the role. So things like LinkedIn, like Glassdoor, PayScale, just researching common interview questions for whatever the company is. And you'll be surprised that a lot of people actually post, because oftentimes, especially large companies, they have interview guides where they might have a bank of 25, 50, 100 questions, but they'll generally pick and choose the same or similar questions over and over. So again, out of those top 100, you better be able to nail those company-specific ones. And another further practice is to basically take the job description and turn that into interview questions. So the easiest way to do that is grab the job description and then say, tell me about a time when you demonstrated the first bullet point. Tell me about a time when you demonstrated the second bullet point. Tell me about a time when you demonstrated the third, and use those, because guess what they're asking for? Someone who can do all those things. So those are probably the most common interview questions that you will get from there, because they're trying to assess whether you can do the work. Well, how better than to ask you more about all those times when you've done that. So do it on the positive side, and then also do it on the negative side. And what that means is, tell me about a time when you demonstrated the first bullet point and something went wrong. Tell me about a time when you demonstrated the second and something went wrong, third and something went wrong. And then you practice again, answering it based on your strengths. So if you're detail-oriented, answer all the questions. If you are a people person, answer all the questions. If you're very analytical, answer all the questions. And the point of answering these questions multiple times in various different ways is that when they ask you that weird question that you've never heard of, then you've already practiced so much that you can come at it from a different angle, and you can basically have that as a great answer because you've practiced in so many ways that there's almost no answers that you haven't practiced. So that's kind of the basic preparation. And then nowadays, a lot of things, because you can't go into the office and go in for an interview, you need to make sure that everything is okay from a virtual interview perspective. So for those of you, well, we ask for your cameras to be off, but you have to make sure that your camera is working. You have to make sure that your internet connection is stable. Your mic isn't there, and most companies will use the same basic software. So it'll be things like Zoom, like Skype, Microsoft Teams, the Cisco products, and what have you. You better make sure that you log into those systems and test your connection first. So make sure you're using a familiar laptop or a tablet or whatever it is, and test it. Close extra programs, so you don't want your backup to accidentally be running when they're doing it and start lagging the connection. Simple things like that. Letting other people know. So if your kids are running around, tell them to be quiet, that sort of thing. Or if you have roommates, just making sure, can you not interrupt me for 45 minutes or however long the interview. And one of the joking things is to dress up, and yes, wear pants, because there's been kind of those interesting things and embarrassing moments where not remembering that the video is still on, and you get up, and well, the best is that it's just pajamas, and the worst is other things that are probably less mentionable there, right? And then thinking about things like a headset. So for those that can invest in some and can afford, then that's generally a better way to get the sound quality. Because sometimes when it's from your mic, if there's a big echo and you can't really hear it as well, use the fact that they can't really see you or everything around you to your advantage. So even though the camera is right here, over here it could be all the job description. All around here, it could be your resume, could be all the different things as reference notes, so you can look around for them. And one thing I recommend is to have a backup plan. And what that usually is the phone number of the interviewer, because it happens that when you have an interview scheduled for Tuesday at 10 a.m., that the construction crews decide to upgrade the internet connection at 10:58, and you better hope that you can pick them up on as a phone call in order to continue the interview. And that goes a long way for someone who is prepared in that way as well. So that's something that I encourage you to think about from an interview perspective. And one thing that I've started hearing folks doing a little bit more is to basically pitch yourself in an interview, right? So answering the standard questions is great and doing it well is awesome. But what often stands out is doing something different. So the typical tell me about yourself question, and then saying, actually, would you mind if I shared my screen and shared a bit of a presentation on why I think I'd be a great fit for role? Well, the interviewer says, okay, sure. And you share it. And it's a pitch that basically talks about yourself, your fit for the role, and really outlining your UVP, your unique value proposition. So for anybody that are familiar with kind of the startup world and pitching, like why you? Versus all the competitors. And your competitors are the 8 other people that they're interviewing. So what makes you uniquely qualified? So not just all the stuff that you talked about, but really focusing on you, your understanding of the role, your understanding of the company, and then making you a unique fit for that, right? And then you finish your presentation, and that's a little bit about myself. And holy crap, I want to hire this guy for sure, because who does this sort of stuff, right? And if you think about it, this stuff takes a while to prepare, but you can use it and probably tweak a few things and change the name of the company and whatever, and use it for the next one and the next one. So it is a small investment that you'll have to make, but it's for those that really want to stand out, this will help you stand out. Now, of course, you have to do a good job on it, because if you have a crappy presentation with misspellings and all that sort of stuff, and it doesn't look very good, but something like that will definitely be something that helps you stand out. And in my opinion, the best way to find a role is to network. My approach is what I call build meaningful connections. And the difference being is that most people, when they network, they treat it like hunting, right? They want to find the whale, the elephant, and get the person to refer them or review their resume or whatever. Whereas I encourage you to think of it like farming. You go and meet with someone, and you connect with them to plant a seed, right? And then in a couple of weeks, in a couple of months, you water it. In a couple of weeks, couple of months, you take away the weeds, and then you give it sunshine, and then what have you, and then eventually, oh, here's some fruit, right? Once in a while, you get lucky, and you find bamboo. And why I use bamboo is bamboo overnight apparently can grow like 2 meters or something like that. And sometimes you meet those connections where you just meet them and you become fast friends. It's like, oh my gosh, it seems like that we've known each other forever because you just hit it off. And those are the people that oftentimes would be kind of the direct line in if they happen to work at a company that you want to work for and they are willing to put their reputation on the line to refer you, then that can happen overnight. But it only happens when you make those connections. So in my approach, I encourage people to make connections, so as actively, proactively as you can, make them more meaningful. So you got to build, be curious, interested, and add value, and then follow it up. So over time, relationships, just like Rome, wasn't built in a day. So you have to build it over time. And my encouragement for pretty much the answer to every how to network question is to care. Like at the end of the day, these are people. At the end of the day, the other person is a human. It's a relationship that you're building. And oftentimes I encourage you to think about your interaction from a professional network setting. If you're wondering whether it's appropriate or not, take it in the context of dating, right? So if you go back, a lot of you will be like, holy crap, what have I been doing? Because a lot of the messages that I get is like, hi, I am a person with 10 years experience in this, blah, 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 blah. Would you get me a job? Okay. So translate that in the context of dating is, hi, I have a lot of qualities that make me great to be married. Can I marry you? Okay. First of all, I just met you. You haven't told me anything. You haven't even taken me out for dinner, right? At least do that. And then maybe after all that, I would want to get to know you, and maybe there's something there. So think about that. A lot of people are too quick to approach and do that. Now, the sad thing is that sometimes it works. It works probably 10, 20% of the time. Just like in the dating world, sometimes you get lucky. One night stands are a thing, right? you can get into that. But if you want kind of a very consistent way, then you have to build a meaningful connection. You have to build those relationships and basically care. And the thing is, when you do that, an application, a cover letter, all that, it's throwaway. Once you do that, it's done. But when you care and build these meaningful connections, this is an investment in your future. This is an investment in your career. It's building kind of social capital in the future. So think about that as a way to build meaningful connections, really just to care. So there's a quote out there that your network is your net worth. right? And I recommend folks to actually spend some time, be proactive. Right now, because you can't just randomly bump into strangers, you can't meet people at interest groups or whatever, you have to be a little more proactive. So I recommend folks to connect with one person daily, right? So on LinkedIn, they'll give you some suggestions. Pick one that's of interest, send a personalized connection, because if you're on LinkedIn, you have to send one of those. Otherwise, you might get ignored. And then just message them. I encourage more, probably 8 a day, 10 a day, as many as you can do. Another great way is to reconnect. And the best way that I found is to go to your text messages, scroll all the way down to your oldest message, and then say hi to that person, right? Because if you think about it, you only really text message the people you kind of know, right? So there was one session that I did, and it was like, oh man, I haven't messaged this person in like 6 years. So how do you do that? It's like, you just message and you just say, oh, hi, Weber. Hi, Lukey. How are you doing? I was thinking about you and hope you're doing well in these times. I'm doing ABC. Yeah, let me know if you want to reconnect. You don't even have to put that last part. Just send a message. And oftentimes you get a message that says, oh my gosh, Lukey, yeah, I was meaning to connect with you and I just got busy and whatever. So how's it going? Let's go grab a virtual coffee and whatever and do it via Zoom and reconnect. And then that rekindles the relationship, sometimes as if no time has passed at all, right? So doing that. And when you think about new connections, remember the answer is to care, and you have to translate care for them. So you have to figure out what's in it for them. So oftentimes it starts by being curious, interested, and looking to add value. And I usually put value in one of 4 ways. The first one is experience. Okay, you've done it before, so you can help them out, right? People might not have that. But 2, they might have connections. Like, I met this guy, Lukey. He's awesome. You should connect with him, and he'd really be able to help you and your business. 3 is resources. You read a book. You downloaded an app. You listened to a podcast. You took this course, whatever it is. I think this would really help you in what would be helpful for your business. And if anything, the 4th one is time. I know nothing about it, but I'll spend the weekend figuring it out, and I'll let you know on Monday, right? So investing that time shows that you actually care. And the best time to connect is actually when there are no postings. So finding a company where we talked about your ideal company and the ones that you want to join, connect with people when there are no jobs, right? No postings out there, because it actually shows that you're curious and interested about them, not because you have an ulterior motive, right? Because you want to take them home to your hotel room, that sort of thing, right? Remember the context of dating. And invest in your relationships, not just for now, but for the next COVID, right? Because there will be one. Every 6 to 12 years, something happens. For the older folks on the call, there was a crash of 2008, 2009. There was the dot-com burst of like 2001, 2002. There's something in the 90s, something in the 80s. So don't be surprised if there's a COVID 2028 or something else 28, where it might not be a virus. It might be a resource shortage. It might be another bubble bursting or whatever. There's a whole bunch of things. So make sure you invest in your relationships and yourself. So the most important thing, in my opinion, is to keep up your mindset, right? Because a lot of times the whole process of job hunting, it's very draining, right? The negativity comes in. Why didn't they respond to my resumes? Why aren't they giving me an offer? Why aren't they doing that? So oftentimes, if you need to be able to say that you can do it, right? And the quote there is one that I love, is he who thinks he can and he who thinks he can't is probably right. So you need to have that attitude of, I will, as I submit these resumes, get an interview. And when you get that interview, I will get an offer, right? Whether you do or you don't, you need to have that right mindset that you can have it. Because if you have this kind of negative defeatist attitude, well, that's probably what's going to happen. Or you'll probably find a way to make it happen if that happens. So find some more moral support. The friendliest, the most positive person that you have, spend more time with them. Call them up or have a Zoom call. Spend more time. Have some motivational podcasts or YouTube videos or whatever. Spend a little bit more time with them. It'll help a lot. And so we covered quite a lot right now. Applications. So you want to make sure that you do those priorities. So you make sure you have a great format, reverse engineer, and then you want to upgrade them. And what I encourage you to do is get it reviewed by a professional. Like, no offense to all of the like career people out there, but oftentimes what I mean by professional is someone who's actually hired someone, right? Either a recruiter, either a hiring manager, because otherwise a lot of people are giving it based on their opinion, right? So get someone who has actually hired people to give you their opinion of it. And obviously, if you can get referred, that's awesome too. For interviews, start practicing now. Well, not right now, but after this call, go grab your smartphone and pick one. Tell me about yourself. You should be able to nail that question, no problem, right off the bat. It's as if you've practiced it so much, it's almost like I'm pressing play on a recording, right? Um, Create one of those pitch decks, right? You'll be surprised at how much that could be beneficial for you, not necessarily just for the presentation part, but the fact that you made the investment to do it, right? And then network, build meaningful connections. That'll be the most important investment that you'll ever make. And really, you do that by caring, right? You can be strategic about it, find and connect with the people in the companies that you want, but sometimes it's just the people around you. Because that person that you just met might not work at a company that you want, but maybe their brother or their sister or their cousin does, or in 2 years they might move there, or in 20 years they might move there. You never know how they can help. And make sure you keep that positive mindset and know that you can do it. So that's the basic parts. And here's the kind of the Q&A part, right? So I'll open the floor, and I guess no, I'm a little ahead of schedule because I was supposed to be done at 6:50. So I think I made some good time. But those are the basics. So I'm not sure if we want to take questions, but otherwise, for those that want to connect with me, let me put in the chat right now. So I encourage everybody who isn't already connected with me to grab me on LinkedIn, and please send a personalized note that says you are part of YPIB, right? And I'll respond. If you don't, I'll probably respond yes anyways. But sometimes when people are not around Canada, I might ignore you. So be aware of that. But for those that are interested, then again, I have a book. It's called Stuff I Wish I Knew Earlier. It's available on Amazon or your favorite online retailers, or in the public library if you want. It's actually this one over here for those that are interested. I have a podcast of the same name, which I share in audio form for those who like to listen. And I have an app. It was actually built with the help of Centennial College. And it's kind of in the first iteration, probably step 1 of 1,000, but at least it's out there as something that I've done. So feel free to connect. And yeah, if there are questions, I think there were a couple of questions that were already in there, and we'll go through them. But otherwise, yeah, what sort of questions do folks have?
Thank you, Luki. It was very interesting, the whole presentation. Thank you so much. We do have a few questions from the participants, and the first one comes from Renato. Must the referral come from within the company, or can it be from someone outside?
It makes more sense if it's from someone in the company, right? Because if you think about it, a referral outside of a company isn't really a referral, right? Because it's really the person in the company that says, okay, I understand the culture of the company, the inner workings of the company, and by saying and putting my reputation that this other person is useful and will fit our culture, will have all the qualities I want. That's really what the referral is doing. So it really needs to come from inside the company, because otherwise outside it doesn't make sense. Now, if the person outside has some sort of like seniority or power over the people hiring inside, like they're your brother or sister or cousin or whatever, then that could also help. Or if they're close friends. So the referral doesn't necessarily, but it's probably better because at least they understand the culture of that. Either if they're not referred in the company, then they have to have a very strong personal connection with the person in the recruiting side or the hiring manager, right? So yeah, that's what I would say. And keep in mind that not all referrals are created equal, which I find that people don't misunderstand that. Because a lot of people will ask me, hey, can you refer me? I'm like, what am I going to say about you? I don't even know you. Like, yeah. I'm going to say it. Like, this is a person who randomly connected with me on LinkedIn. Take a look at their resume. versus, no, I've been working with him for like 5-10 years and he's amazing. You should really hire him. Those are very different types of referrals. So just be aware that not all referrals are created the same. So does that, hopefully that answers the question, Renato?
It should make sense, yeah. So the other one comes from Yela, and she asks, what if you are a new graduated who doesn't have any achievement yet?
So I would say that you're probably selling yourself short in that if you haven't done anything and all you've done is literally like gone to school and gone home, then you might have some challenges. So in that case, you go out and have some experience because it's a competitive process, right? So if you're trying to compete against other people who have, well, unfortunately, you're going to end up at the bottom of the pile, right? Because the whole job hunt process is not whether you're qualified for the job, it's whether you are the most qualified for the job, right? So it's a competitive process, right? So that word most is in there. But oftentimes people are actually selling themselves short. They've actually done a lot more than they give themselves credit for, right? The assignments that they've done, the projects that they've worked on, the volunteering that they've done, things around the house for your family business. There's actually a lot more things that people do. One thing that I recommend folks is basically to create a career document, right? Which is kind of a super resume of everything that you've ever done. And it doesn't have to be nice and clean as a resume, but it's really saying, what have I done in the last 3-4 months? Yeah. Because oftentimes when you try to categorize that, like, what have I done in the past 5 years? Like, it's got to be pretty significant to be in your memory in 5 years. But if it's in 4 months, the smaller things that are still useful and relevant, those are the things that come top of mind. And a lot of those small things accumulated over time are actually more achievements than you think. So in that regard, I would either say, one is go get the experience if you really haven't done anything, or two, actually think about your experience and the things that you've done, and probably give yourself a little more credit than you have. So hopefully that answers that question.
Hopefully. Or Ella, I don't know. To me, yes, actually. We have another one from Hamida, and she's asking, what advice do you give to people who have taken a gap in employment? For example, like having children or studying or traveling. Mm-hmm. How can they make it an advantage and not a disadvantage?
So in gaps, what I would do is to focus on kind of the achievements and activities that you've done during that period, right? So one of the most creative ones for someone on mat leave that I found was they were, if let's say it was me, it's like I was the COO of the Danu Karyanto household, of which I managed the supply chain and logistics of everything in the kitchen and the whatever, and then they basically translated all the stuff that they do into kind of business line. And I thought that was really creative and really awesome, right? So it's thinking about things like that. And when you took your gap year, then what did you do? Did you literally just sit on your couch and play video games? Okay, that's probably not a great use of time. But if you explore the world, how can that benefit the company? If you go back to my reverse engineering the job posting, how does that benefit the company or the role? Right? So the fact that you traveled to 30 countries over the past 12 months, well, how could that benefit the company in the role? You must have done a bunch of stuff during that time that did there. If you went and meditated on a mountain, right? Well, what sort of advantage would that give you in that? So in those gap years, emphasize on how that is a bonus for you. So it depends on what you did during that gap year. But again, it's a competitive process. So is someone with a gap year that didn't do very much versus someone who actually worked really hard, who am I going to pick? Well, it depends on what they did and how they present themselves during that gap year. So hopefully that helps, but there's often ways of kind of selling yourself. So if any of you are kind of in sales or marketing, then it's a great way to kind of reposition and change the perspective on what sort of things that you've done and the value that you've had over that. So it would be just changing the perspective of what you did during that term and focus on the value it would provide to the company. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, we have another one from Yasser. Yasser. What would be the best or most used job search engine by employers? Oh, that is kind of a statistic question.
The most job, I don't know from a statistical perspective. I know a lot of companies are switching over to LinkedIn in the sense that they're looking less on like traditional resumes, and being more proactive. Because the difference between something like LinkedIn and let's say something like Indeed is if I do my posting, I get responses, right? People are applying. It's a reactive model. Whereas if I'm LinkedIn, I'm looking for people that might fit. Whether they have a job or not, I'm actually trying to find them. So it's a more proactive way of finding people. And like a lot of the job search engines that people are doing is they're creating events. So I know a lot of companies that I know, they're creating like hackathons and conferences and case competitions, because not only do I get to see you, I get to see you in action, right? Because would I rather hire this random piece of paper or the person who placed number one in my case competition? I'm probably going to pick number one, right? That's probably a no-brainer, right? And it probably doesn't take them that much more effort or expenses to do it, because it is quite expensive to go through all those resumes and things like that. Absolutely. So, I mean, for your question, if I were you, and I don't know all the statistics behind it, I know that LinkedIn is there. Like, I think Indeed is probably the biggest one out there, and the one that I've started hearing a lot more of is things like ZipRecruiter. So, and I'm not sponsored by any of those companies or whatever, so you'll have to do your own research. But those are the ones that I am aware of.
I see. Yeah.
Although there is this app called Career Buddy that I think is really awesome, and yeah,
that should be perfect. That should be the leader. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not
we
really
have
a job
another
board,
one from Farai. What advice do you have for an individual that is highly qualified but has been underemployed and aims to land a role that matches their qualifications? Is that fair?
So they're underemployed right now. Okay. So
they are highly qualified, but they have been underemployed. Let's say in a job that does not match
sure.
the qualifications, and they do aim to land to a role that matches their qualifications.
Sure. So for me, it would be, well, applying and going for jobs that match their qualifications. Because why are you underemployed is probably, one, you had to get something to pay the bills, which is great and it's fine. But you shouldn't be necessarily applying for those. You should try to apply for the roles that you're qualified for. Now, there's a kind of a stigma against kind of foreign experience where oftentimes they don't necessarily give you the same kind of recognition for work in another country as in Canada. So, but like if you're kind of one level lower, I wouldn't necessarily say that's underemployed. That's just kind of on your way to get back to in the Canadian market. But if you're like doing kind of like more labor type work where you're working at a grocery store or quick serve or restaurant or something like that, then it's just demonstrating that you can still do the work, right? So what sort of qualification, what sort of things have you done to let them know that you've done that? So depending on how long you've been in this underemployed job, like if you've been doing that for like 5 years, then it's kind of like, can you still do that work? Like, yes, you're overqualified, but like that was 5 years ago. Like, can you still do the work? So what demonstrates your ability to do that? Have you stayed in connection with your local association, your professional association? Have you volunteered and done work with that? Do you do something on the weekends or whatever? So help me believe that you can still do the work, right? So yeah, basically apply for the jobs, network with people in that area, and convince them that you can do the job. So it'd be something like that.
Basically, pitch yourself, right?
Yeah, and all these questions are generalities based on the questions, but a lot of them will have much more specific details if you kind of reached out to me specifically and said, okay, well, in this instance, it might fall in a different direction. So sure. just as a disclaimer.
There's another one from Alma. How can we be strategic when connecting with someone on LinkedIn?
Well, the strategic part of connecting with someone on LinkedIn is connecting with people in the areas that you want to be in. Right. So if you want to work at one of the big banks, guess who are the people that you should connect with? Like, if you want to work at one of the big banks, connecting with the telecoms is probably not being very strategic, right? It's connecting with people there, and then you can increase the likelihood of those strategic connections by finding commonalities. Alumni are great for anyone who's in school. If other people have graduated from the same program, the same school or whatever, that's a great way to connect with them. And alumni can be used broadly, where it's not just school. It could be any organization that you were once a part of, right? Could it be a not-for-profit? Could it be like some sort of interest group or whatever? Those could also be one. It could be another company where you worked at the overseas division of this particular company. Those can be automatic kind of LinkedIn points. So strategic is having kind of that vision of like, well, who is that person, and how could I be of help to them, right? And putting yourself in kind of the most probable place for you to get a positive response from that person, and being able to build a meaningful connection with them. So does that answer your question, Alma?
Hopefully it does.
Okay.
It does, actually. Do you have any minutes to take another, like 2 or 3 more questions?
Sure. Yep, yeah? I can do that.
Okay. There is a question from the pool. Due to the current situation, companies are all working online and potentially will continue to do so going forward. Based on this, should we be looking at jobs outside of Toronto, or that's not a good strategy?
If you've exhausted all of your job possibilities within Toronto, then it's not a bad idea to look outside. But chances are there's plenty of opportunities in Toronto that you haven't yet capitalized on that you want to look at, right? So I would probably argue that anybody who's saying that they've exhausted it is probably not looking hard enough, because there's tons of opportunities. There's lots of companies hiring, right? Now, not necessarily exactly in the role that you want, but there are lots of companies hiring right now. Maybe not the big name companies that everybody knows, but there's always companies hiring. So the other part is, if you decide to go outside of Toronto, even when things decide to go to normal, whatever normal is, there's probably going to be some sort of in the office requirement. So if you live in Scarborough and end up getting a job in Guelph, right? So yes, you might be able to work from home for X number of days a week, but chances are you are going to have to head into the office at some point. So and it's a matter of, will that company take you, right? So if you do get a job, would you move that far west or east or north or whatever the company is located? Are you willing to relocate? So yeah, there's a whole bunch of questions around that, but I would say, if you want Toronto, let's focus on that. But if you're open to elsewhere, and you feel that you can add more value to those types of companies, then sure, why not go for them as well.
So given that we are at this topic, what are, according to your researches and knowledge, like what are the main industries that are hiring right now? If you can share that info with us.
A lot of healthcare, a lot of supply chain logistics, and ed tech are like the 3 big ones that I know, because everything's online education, and anyone doing kind of online educational software, they're hiring left, right, and center. Supply chain logistics, again, because a lot of deliveries and stuff like that. Those ones, it maybe not in the types of jobs that you want, because a lot of it is kind of the manual of drivers and people who can pack and stuff like that. Healthcare, right? So a lot of folks, like the pharmas, everything PPE, personal protective equipment, they're trying to find people to do a whole bunch of things. Sometimes, again, a lot of them will be kind of the more manual stuff to pack and fabricate and whatever. But there's going to be ones to kind of support all those and the logistical functions around that, and the coordination and management of it too. But yeah, so those are the 3 that I know are an abundance of hiring. And there's always pockets of everything that they're hiring, because financial services, there's a bunch of people that have to figure out, like, what is the risk of someone whose mortgage is coming up, right? Like, what happens in this climate? Insurance, and anyone that's an essential service, yeah, there's a lot of them are still maybe not like supremely actively, but they're hiring, right? So does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was mine.
Okay, perfect.
I have one. I'm trying to pick the last one. If is there any? There is Charity. There are a few questions coming up. I thought I had the last one, but I have a few more. So if you have time, we would like to go through them too.
Sure.
Okay. So there is Charity. She's asking, once we have connected to someone on LinkedIn, how do you build on this connection? Like, how do you build it in the future? Any strategy on how to stay connected? not bother those people?
Yeah. So remember, the answer is to care. Again, you have to interpret care in the situation. So how do you stay connected? I usually calendarize it to say, okay, like reconnect with this person in 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years, whatever time frame that you want. Usually it depends on the conversation. So how did you end up? What sort of connection? Was it a strong? Was it a weak connection? Because if you message them next week and that you didn't have a very strong connection, they'll be like, oh, why are you talking to me again? Versus like, wow, we really hit it off, and of course I would want to talk to you again next week. So it all depends on you and your ability. But generally a couple of months would be one, where every 4, 6, 7, 8, 9 months, like, hey, how's it going? Because a lot of stuff can happen in like a quarter or two or half a year. But in less than a month, not that much would have happened, right? Well, minus this year where a lot of things happened.
I do
In
have
the course
my reserve, my reserves, because considering COVID, everything might happen.
Yeah, fair enough. But in a normal time period where you're pretty guaranteed that within like 4 to 6 months something has changed, right?
Yeah,
But within 1 or 2, it's unlikely there's been significant one. So I actually encourage folks to calendarize it. Set a calendar reminder that says reconnect with Lukey, and have it pop up in 5 months and say, hey Lukey, how's everything going with your app, your book, your podcast, and whatever, and then have it set to reoccur and never end. So you'll get a pop-up in, so what is it, June. So that'll be in November. It'll go boop, reconnect with Lukey, and you'll be like, okay, let me reconnect. Then it'll pop up in April, and it'll say boop, reconnect with Lukey, and then you stay connected, and you build that. And again, you're trying to care, you're trying to add value, you're trying to help that person. You're not doing it just for the sake of connecting. You're trying to care. So just keep that in mind. And the more that you can add value, you say, oh, I was thinking about you, Lukey. Here's a resource, whatever. That kind of systematic way of connecting with people, hopefully you start to do that naturally, because the more you practice, the more something develops, right? But if you never start thinking about people, what makes you think you'll start thinking about people without you doing it, right? So that calendarization, in my opinion, helps.
it takes a bit of practice too, I think, but that's
Yeah.
another.
And actually, for those that are interested, as a bit of self-promotion, next Friday I have a session called the Networking Confidence Club. For those that are interested in kind of practicing networking, we get a group of people there to kind of connect and give people feedback so that you can actually practice doing that. So it'll be a good session there.
What are your expectations looking on about the new normal, that maybe when this pandemic will go, if it doesn't come back anymore? What are the new normal standards? What do you think?
So people will always want to connect, right? So like social distancing won't be forever. My anticipation is that once the vaccine is created or shortly thereafter, then people will be a little bit more relaxed, right? And they'll start be able to congregate in big groups. Virtual stuff and work from home, that'll be more pervasive, right? There'll be more people allowed to do that. So a lot of the barriers and kind of the assumptions will change. So I worked in management consulting, and a lot of that was built on traveling of a very expensive consultant to another city. Well, they haven't had to do that for months. And a lot of projects have started virtually where we never actually physically met the client. Well, so some of those traditions have kind of been busted, right? Because you don't really have to shake someone's hand in order to trust them and start a project and all that sort of stuff. But it's one where at the end of the day, people are still longing for that connection. So they still will want people to meet with each other. So there's going to be a lot more tech that's going to help and automate all this stuff. And then there's going to be a lot more like old school, where there's probably going to be events where all you do is like unplug and be outside for a whole month or something like that, right? Where it's almost the opposite of being like isolated and socially distant, where all you do is spend time outside with a whole group of people, right? It's almost like anti-COVID isolation, right? So I'm sure there'll be something like that too. So, but like the world will change, and a lot of the education will change, because the schools, when everything's remote and online, like what's the role of a professor and a teacher? right? When the class is delivered like on demand, the whole course is there, and I can take it at my own pace, and they're just here to check on me once in a while. Like what's that? Like doctors and stuff, where I can call up my doctor and I don't have to wait like 3 hours at the office to do that, right? Like how will all those things change? So I would say that maybe, I don't know, I'm making up a number, like 60 to 70% of the world will go back to as it was before, but there's going to be good 30-40% that'll be totally different, right? So some for the good, some for better, right? So yeah, that's my thoughts. And I'm not a futurist. This is not on any scientific data. It's more on kind of my gut and my observations. So
yeah, that's what we were looking for. There might be studies there that say that this will last forever, but yeah, who knows? I have a question, kind of strange one, but I'm gonna go for it. From LC, I don't know what the full name is. However, the question goes like this: how do you find out salary if it isn't listed? It may not be worth your or their time applying and interviewing if salary is too low. How do you answer range questions?
So there are anonymous websites.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there are anonymous websites, things like PayScale and Glassdoor, that'll give you ranges, right? So a lot of this, unfortunately, is anonymous reported, where it's like, do you work for so-and-so company and how much do you make? Like, it's not validated against like taxes or anything like that. So it's one where you can only do a guesstimate, and oftentimes they have ranges where you're going to give it like a plus or minus 20% is usually kind of the recommendations that I have in there. But that would be the range, right? So if their high end is your low end, then it might not be worth your time. But it's one of those things where how much is salary an influence for you, right? So those folks that have no Canadian experience, you probably take what you can get. Now for the folks, because I think there were a lot of professionals there, they might be saying, no, I'm actually looking for the right opportunity. So yeah, those anonymous sites, they're only so good because it's a little bit based on the trust of people on whether or not they're honest about it. But that's probably a roundabout figure. And then as you investigate more and more, you'll probably have to go into the interview and they'll give you some sort of number and range that they're looking for, right? But you'll have to go out there. There's either those sites or there's recruiters and stuff that may or may not share the information, but you can take a look at those sites. So hopefully that was helpful.
Yeah, that was. I would only add that most of the vacancies actually that you see, they have the range salary there. So
yeah,
from my experience, but that's...
some of them do, some of them don't, right? Yeah. Actually, I would say a very small number actually advertise that. Usually it's like a public sector or some sort of government and NGO, like a school or something like that. Then they'll publicize the range because they're set ranges. And when it's private, then it's not as transparent.
True. I would go for the last one, but not the least. Luki, I see you're very focused, and we would like to know, how do we stay focused and energized during this pandemic, which is quite heavy actually. Doug for just extend it till the end of the month. The restrictions, so nothing looks good, but anyways.
How do you stay focused and energized?
Energized, yeah.
I would say to take care of yourself, right? So it starts the whole analogy of when you're on an airplane, they say to put on your mask before you take care of everybody else. So sleep, eat well, exercise, like those basic things, like don't just I don't know, stay up late and watch like extra Netflix or whatever, or eat like garbage stuff. Like get out there and exercise, be healthy. So there's kind of the basic fundamental stuff. I'm a huge advocate of things like meditation, right? So spending some time with yourself, breathing and decompressing and doing that. Doing things that energize you, right? Spending time with friends and family, your significant other, your kids, when they don't get on your nerves, but when you can play with them. So do those things, those hobbies. And it's one where even though we try to social distance and isolate, like you can take a walk. It is legally allowed, right? You can get outside. So take care of those basic things and just nourish your mind too, where like read books, consume content, and all that sort of stuff. The focus part, meditation, in my opinion, helps. There's all sorts of different things that you can do from a focus perspective, understanding why, getting rid of distractions. There's a lot of it is training, right? One of the things which I'm sure people won't like is one thing that has helped me stay focused is to start the morning with a cold shower, right? And
that's very Asian thing, actually.
well, it's yeah, in the personal development world, it's pretty high because nobody wants to take a cold shower. It's not good. So the fact that
you up like
it wakes you up. There's all sorts of like physical benefits too. And the way that I've said it is like, if there's something good for me and I don't want to do it, yet I do it anyway, how much more focus can I do for everything else that I get to do for the rest of the day?
True.
So this shower, like it's sitting there and it's freezing and I know it's cold, but it's like, and then it's done. Okay, I did it, it's over with and whatever. Wow, now I can, when I get out of a cold shower, I can conquer the world, that sort of thing.
Sure.
So again, a lot of people won't like it, but there's a lot of things that you won't like that if you do, would be better for you. So
yeah,
hopefully that
strategy, you just reminded me that, I know that.
Okay. So everybody in the morning is going to be screaming and like, but hopefully that was helpful. Yeah.
Well, look, it seems that we have answered all the questions. Apologize if we skipped anyone, but I tried to go through all of them. If there anything else that you might want to add, you're welcome to do that. Otherwise, yeah.
Thank you, Mateus, for the hands, and hi, Lynn, for that. So I appreciate that, and thanks for everybody that attended and giving me time on your Thursday evening. So I appreciate your attention, and yeah, feel free to connect. I'm quite approachable. Happy to answer any other questions afterwards. But and I appreciate all the folks at the YPIB. So thank you, Lydia. Thank you, Natalia. Thank you, Asli, as well, for organizing. I think this is an amazing turnout and very well organized event. And thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you for accepting our invitation, and we'll look forward to the next one, but we will take some time, so we will use the strategy you advised with.
That's perfect.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lydia. Thank you, Luki. It was fantastic, an amazing presentation. It's so good to be with all of you here. So to everyone, I'm going to post here in the chat the survey link, okay? So please feel free to fill that link, to fill that survey, and to give your feedback to us as well. And also, I would like to share that we are in the YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn as well. So please, you can just go there and follow us. We also are at Eventbrite. So if you wanted to be sure that you're going to be in the next webinar or the next event, so please just go in the social media and then you can find us more information, okay? We really appreciate everyone's time. So we know that this time is not being easy so far, but hopefully going through this and we're going to be more energized. And we really appreciate everyone for this time, okay? Thank you so much, Luki.
Thank you. And for those that were interested in the session next Friday, I think there's like 5 more spots left. So just try it again and see if it'll work. So hopefully I'll see you there, or happy to be connected. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. So I'm just going to post one more time here in the chat box, okay, the survey link, so everyone can fill there.
Here, and we did also post your event, Luki, here in the chat.
Perfect.
So
yeah, I think I saw it.
People can register from here.
Perfect.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Have a great evening. Have a great rest of the week. Good weekend.
Thanks, everyone.
Good to see you.
Take care.
Thank you. Take care. Till
Bye.
next time. Bye.